President Trump's tariffs are sending the whole world into meltdown, but how is it going to affect us who live in the UK? Honestly, it isn't an easy question to answer, but there are a few ways that it's likely to affect you. Firstly, we have to understand what the tariff changes by President Trump mean and what they are. A tariff is basically a tax on goods that are brought into a country, which is put in place by the government of the country the goods are being brought into. I.e., in the case of the UK, if you're based in the UK and you buy something from the US, you'll be taxed 10% of the value of what you have bought because the UK have a 10% tariff on US imports. Something that costs £100 would cost £110 with the UK tariff on US imports supplied. And that extra 10% or £10 would go to the government. It's because of that 10% UK tariff that the UK have on US imports, which is the reason President Trump has implemented a 10% tariff on UK imports, i.e. goods sold by the UK to the US. And that new tariff was part of President Trump's Liberation Day tariff changes on April 2nd, 2025 that saw the US implement a minimum tariff of 10% on all US imports, with 60 other countries getting slapped with tariffs as high as 104%. The US-China trade war is getting very spicy. But unlike China, who are in the gulag right now, the UK have been given the minimum tariff rate by the US government, which honestly is pretty good news. The tariffs imposed by President Trump are going to affect how expensive things are for American citizens, as usually importers pass on the tariff costs to their customers. And as long as the UK don't raise UK tariffs in retaliation, which is unlikely, then UK citizens are unlikely to see price increases on goods imported from the US. However, where it gets a bit mad is when it comes to those companies that do export to the US and those that work for those companies. Internationally, the US is the largest buyer of UK goods, accounting for 15.3% of total UK goods exports. The UK exported £60 billion worth of goods to the US last year, mainly cars, pharmaceuticals, and machinery. If those US tariffs hit UK companies too hard, then it's likely that they're going to make job cuts if the numbers stop adding up. Given that the news of the tariffs have affected the stock market in the maddest way, it's also likely to affect any stocks and shares you may hold, as well as your pensions. Now, this isn't really going to be a big problem for those of you who aren't due to retire for some time, but for those who are due to retire really soon, it could look a little more scary. And for those who are invested long term, this is just a bump in the road. If you're a fan of Warren Buffett, now would be the perfect time to buy more stocks. Finally, it could also mean that mortgages become less expensive, as the Bank of England cut interest rates to try and stimulate the UK economy. Honestly, there are some potentially positive and negative changes when it comes to the US tariffs for UK citizens, depending on how you're looking at things, but it is complex with a lot of moving parts. But I would love to know what you think. Do you think the US tariffs are a good or bad change? Let me know in the comments.